It was morning, and they were already in the boat. They knew it was going to be hot as they heaved the net into the water. Both Andrew and his brother Simon had heard of the charismatic, wandering rabbi who came from Nazareth. They'd been talking about him a lot. Then, unexpectedly, a commotion of people making their way along the shoreline. They seemed to be gathered around someone. A voice rose above the commotion. "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Was he calling out to them? Could it be? Yes, it was him, Jesus, shouting out to them in the boat. With scarcely a glance at each other, still less a second thought, the brothers set about getting to shore. They wanted to know more. They wanted to meet this man for themselves. So it began. Two brothers who became followers of Jesus. The rest, as they say, is history. Of course, you can follow the actual story in Mark's Gospel, starting at chapter 1, verses 14 to 20. Last week, we considered a different encounter that, on the face of it, didn't go very far. At least, we know nothing more of it. That was the rich young man and Jesus. We noted that chance encounters can follow a number of paths. They can become well-trodden as the relationship grows. They can come to nothing, a dead end that we never go down again, or they remain known to us but rarely thought of, still less revisited with any frequency or enthusiasm. This week we're going down the first path. Like Andrew and Simon, better known to us of course as Peter, we're going to explore more about this man Jesus. We're assuming he seems like a good thing, and as such, we want to know more. We're assuming that we know enough to have piqued our interest. What we've learned intrigues us. It begs questions, but it also inspires the desire to find answers. In this sense, we're hooked, which isn't to say we won't wriggle off the hook further down the line, but for now, we're happy to be drawn in closer. This is the stage in a relationship in which friendliness directs and motivates our encounter and is often characterized by a heightened sense of curiosity about the other. We've a way to go yet, but we're clear it's worth our time and effort. Indeed, we're happy to give both. As with our ordinary human relationships, so also with God. This stage is an important moment of opportunity because it signifies our opening up. We're prepared to lower the defences a little more. We're prepared to hear the other out. We're essentially well disposed and receptive to an exchange of ideas, thoughts, and concerns. In terms of our prayer life, this can be likened to that stage of learning how to read the scriptures, praying the formal prayers of the church, things like the Lord's Prayer, confession, and others we hear repeated. We're exposed to and show some interest in sermons and other teaching about the Christian life. We may even borrow or buy books to feed our sense of curiosity alongside conversations with other Christians. As we do, we inevitably begin to weigh up and ponder what we hear, read, see, and think. It's a stage in which we're working out how this new discovery, this new way of relating, sits with us and our views, lifestyle, commitments, and other relationships. Put like this, we realise, as I said a few moments ago, we have a way to go yet. This stage of any relationship takes time, effort, and some degree of commitment. We also realise that the relationship can either keep growing or it can stagnate. It can be embraced or rejected, or it may stay where it is, friendly and well disposed, but neither invested nor explored any further. You know the sort of thing, someone with whom you can pick up a friendly conversation when you happen to bump into them, but not something or someone you seek out. There can be many reasons why relationships don't get past the first flush of friendliness. What they all share, though, is a sense that we simply don't have as much in common as we first thought. Commitment wanes, time is no longer made available, boundaries are not expanded, nor our defences lowered any further. But it would be unwise to judge either ourselves or others for this. This is a natural progression in all relationships, and a recognition that Jesus himself confronts those who would follow him with. It is important to remember and heed the truth that Jesus simply didn't ever ask people the sorts of things that so many modern churches frequently do. There was no requirement to adhere to a set of beliefs and practices, no expression of personal guilt or confession of sin, prayers of commitment, still less acceptance of theological explanations or what we call dogmas. Consistently, Jesus simply issues an invitation and then allows the space for people to weigh him, his teaching and actions in the balance of their own minds. In other words, to get to know him and decide what they want to do next. That's a hard truth for Christians at the beginning of the 21st century to wrap their minds round. So accustomed are we to centuries' worth of teaching and practice that has so often asked the very things Jesus did not. That's not to say that Jesus does not challenge our values, beliefs, and ways of living. But it is to say that the things Jesus challenges us with are of a different order, and that it is always presented as invitation, something the hearer can freely choose to embrace or reject. This is summed up in another encounter related in John's Gospel, which involves the wider band of Jesus' disciples, not just the 12, and it can be found in John chapter 6, verses 60 to 69. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But among you there are some who do not believe." For Jesus knew from the first who were the ones who did not believe and who was the one that would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by the Father." Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. In our prayer exercise this week, I invite you to listen to the story of Jesus' exchange with his disciples again. I'm going to read the passage through one more time, more slowly, more prayerfully. As I do, listen attentively and carefully as you did to last week's passage. But this week, I invite you to use your imagination to place yourself in the story, to be there with Jesus and the other disciples. See what you see, hear what you hear, feel what you feel, think what you think. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But among you, there are some who do not believe." For Jesus knew from the first who were the ones that did not believe and who was the one that would betray him. And he said, "For this reason, I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by the Father." Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." In your own time, you may wish to repeat the prayer exercise once or twice more. If you do, you might also wish to notice and write down what stands out for you, the phrases and words that attracted your attention, what the passage asks of you, how it speaks to you and your life. Did you answer Jesus' question to the 12? If so, what was your answer? Again, as we did last week, simply let the story do what it is intended to do, to provoke a reaction. Then notice, what are the things about Jesus' teaching that may offend others? What things about Jesus do you find hard? What attracts you to Jesus' teaching and way of life? What keeps you in your relationship with Jesus and God? How does the church influence your commitment? In what ways does the church help you to grow in your relationship with God? In what ways does the church help you to understand Jesus more? In what ways does the church frustrate your relationship with God? And finally, in what ways does the church confuse your understanding of Jesus?